Getting back to technology, I think it's important that the state plays a role in the future of technology here. It's not just something that we hope HP or we hope somebody drops in on us. It's important that the state has a mission of what they want to do. Arkansas is largely rural, and so it just makes sense for us to encourage more broadband access. The more access that we can have out in the rural communities, the better off we're all going to be, because it just raises the education level, raises the opportunities, not just here in Fort Smith, but all over the state. So it's important that we put together a plan that identifies this, that talks about what the state's involvement is going to be, because it's not something that's going to be free, but it is vitally important to the future, not just for us competing nationally, but competing globally.
Jim, any last remarks? I'm over here playing solitaire, so. Jake, this next question goes to you. When the state senator or representative goes to Little Rock, he's given committee assignments. And you both have gone through this process before. What committee would you want to be assigned to? Where do you feel you would be most effective on whichever committee? Jake?
That's a great question, and you get it asked at some of these other forums, and people just stand up and say revenue and tax and insurance and commerce and sit down. It really doesn't tell anybody anything. Why would it be beneficial for me to be on revenue and tax? And that would be the number one committee I would be on. Number one, every tax, everything that impacts the budget comes before that committee. So it's important that we have people that understand how the budget works. I've got a finance background, and being a small business owner, I see how those things interact every day. So it's important that we get that kind of background, but it's also important that we have people that are conservative and are willing to make tough choices. You know, in the Senate, you got a committee of 7. It takes 4 votes to get that bill out of committee and go to the Senate floor, where you have a better chance of probably having more like-minded people. So it's going to be important that we have somebody that not only understands what's going on, but is able to articulate that to the others. The other committee that I want to be on is Insurance and Commerce. Those are the 2 committees that I've served on in the House. Those are, obviously every committee has its importance. Education is vital, public health is vital. Insurance and Commerce is going to play a big role in this next session because of the travesty that we've got nationally in Obamacare. And, Frank talks about his bill that he's got that will repeal it. He doesn't have a bill. It's an interim study. And that has no validity as we move forward in the next session. So the next session will be vital for us to stand up and take something that's going to come before the Insurance and Commerce Committee, I would expect, and deal with it on Arkansas's level. How does it affect Arkansas? How much is it going to cost? And how are we going to get rid of it?
You still got 30 seconds. Jim?
The Public Health Welfare and Labor Committee was my first election. My first was elected office in 2003. And Public Health Welfare and Labor and the city county level. I served on both of those committees all the way through 6 years of serving as House Representative. If possible, I would like to serve on those 2 committees again. The reason being is think about Fort Smith being the #1 manufacturing capital in Arkansas, second largest city. Well, what goes through that committee? Things like workman's comp issues, the health insurance, any type of safety in the workplace. When you talk about those issues, those are important. So if you're on Public Health Welfare and Labor, you can help stop some really bad legislation from happening. The city county level deals with all kinds of issues that could have a negative effect on future water. We handled one a few years ago that was going on in Little, and we voted in that committee to block any further consideration of a bill that would allow some folks that were wanting to build some very nice homes at the threat of good quality water. And I think about the big impoundment we have here on Lake Fort Smith. We want to protect it. Thank you.
This race is interesting because the 3 candidates have legislative backgrounds, and you don't see that a whole lot of times where you won't have on-the-job training going in Little Rock. Now I'm going to start with Jim this time. Jim, what have you learned from your experience in the state legislature that could be an advantage to you and Fort Smith if you become state senator in District 13?
I'm sorry, you have to repeat that. What have I learned?
What have you learned from your experience in the state legislature that could be an advantage to you and to Fort Smith if you become state senator?
Thank you. That's what I learned in those 6 years. It was just it was the relationships are important. Relationships built on trust and honesty with other legislators, but at the same time maintaining your integrity. When you say to them, you know, I'm not going to vote for an increased tax because I think it'll hurt economic development, then you need to stick with it. And I took some months over voting against the the severance tax on natural gas because there's a lot of arm twisting. I didn't cave into that because I really believe, as did the Senate pro tem. You may remember Bob Johnson who made very clear he was opposed to the severance tax on natural gas. He felt it jeopardized economic development of the big deal share. I believe the same way. And you have to be able to take a stand, stay with that, and not cave in or any kind of promises. You sit in the speaker's office and he said, well, Jim, what project would you really like to have? And you have to go look at him and say, Mr. Speaker, it's going to require one vote to sell out the people of Fort Smith for an increased tax, then I don't guess we're going to get that project. And I've had to do that. And you have to be able to do that, but at the same time, work with people when you can. You just can't cave in every time the wind blows. You don't get legislation passed by being obstinate or being against things. You just have to maintain your quality of what you believe in. You have to make sure that you have your core issues. If you oppose in general the sales taxes, and you can have a campaign on that, or you get down there and you stay with that. If you believe that you can vote with somebody on an issue, do it. If it's good for your people. That's the main thing I'm going to look at, what is good for Fort Smith.
The thing that I learned most about being down there is, number one, it's not about me. It's a whole lot bigger than me. And I remember the very first time that I was 25 years old, knew very little about politics. Wasn't married, I didn't know much about life, really. And I got up at the nurses' forum, and I said, you know, I'm the last guy here that's going to tell a nurse how changing laws are going to affect her life every day. But I can tell you this, I promise you that I'll always listen to you, and I'll always try to do things that make your life better every day. But I said, coming with that promise, I need some responsibility comes on your side. You have to be there to tell me what comes up. You know, we can go down and pass laws every day that affect nursing, and it not ever affect my life, but it affects a nurse's life every day. So I think the number one thing is you got to be a good listener, and you got to be able to stand up, like Jim said, to stand up when you need to stand up. Fort Smith needs somebody that stands up for them, that can be effective and can communicate. And you're gonna leave here going, all Jake talked about was being effective in communication, and those are the two biggest points I think for this next election.
Jim?
I'll give you a quick example of a technique that I've used and I employed and worked very well, is I would find an issue that was important to Fort Smith. For example, the reduction in the tax on homes. I've worked that legislation, worked it, was the lead sponsor on it, and it became pretty popular. In other words, there were a lot of Republican Democrats that liked it. Speaker asked me in his office, said, Jim, Governor would like that for a Democrat to handle it. You have a problem with that? Mr. Speaker, as long as we get this bill passed, then I'm good with becoming the #1 co-sponsor. I held